Howdy there, folks. This is Samuel Johnson, and welcome back to the MCU Perspectives What If Edition. And today we're going to be discussing episode 24 of Marvel's What If 1872. Alright, I'm not going to be doing that voice throughout this whole video, but we are going to be looking at a Western story. So, much like how Season 1 adapted Marvel Zombies and Season 2 wound up adapting Marvel 1602, this episode is What If once again adapting another Marvel Alternate Universe miniseries, specifically Marvel 1872. Now, for any comic fans watching this video, if you don't know what Marvel 1872 is, I don't blame you. While I'm sure that the Marvel 1872 has its fans, it's not an alternate universe that I see revisited very often. In fact, the first time that I think the Marvel 1872 universe was showcased at all was in the titular miniseries that in itself was a tie-in to Secret Wars 2015. Now, on the off chance you haven't read that and kind of glossed over me talking about it in previous videos, the 2015 Secret Wars event basically revolved around the multiverse being destroyed and the remaining fragments of the multiverse being basically patched back together into a new world called Battleworld, with each region of Battleworld being a fragment of a destroyed parallel universe. And the tie-ins to Secret Wars typically focused on each of those regions and just kind of showed what life was like in each of these segments of Battleworld. For the most part, because they were all secular and didn't really like associating with one another, they all pretty much continued the affairs as normal because from their perspective, this is just how things were, and they just kind of accepted living on these regions. And of course, one of those regions was a world set in the Old West, Marvel 1872. Out of curiosity, and because I am a sucker for alternate universe stories, plus, as I mentioned, 1602 is one of my favorite comics of all time, I did end up reading Marvel 1872. And I admit I can kind of see why the universe wasn't revisited. Now, I don't want you to misunderstand. I loved the premise. I loved the idea of transplanting the Marvel Universe into the Old West. And for the most part, I think that the miniseries did a good job with that. I was interested in the world and seeing how it played out. I loved seeing the alternate variations of characters and how they still came about in this Old West setting. I loved how they kind of set up to the dominoes to showcase characters becoming certain other characters, like with how they kind of set up Bruce Banner to eventually become the Hulk, or how they introduced this 1872 version of Iron Man. Seriously, that was awesome. But the problem for me was that Marvel 1872's story just wasn't that good. It was trying to be like a typical old Western story about the underdog hero fighting against this corrupt politician or whatever, but the conflict for why they were fighting the politician didn't really make sense. To give context, it involved a sheriff version of Steve Rogers duking it up against the mayor of a old western town called Timely, and the mayor was the kingpin, who he himself was working for the Roxxon Corporation, who was overseeing the whole town and just kind of doing all this corrupt, shady stuff because Roxxon in the Marvel Universe is just full of crap. But basically, the reason why the conflict was happening was because this guy was trying to blow up a dam, this guy, Red Wolf, was trying to blow up a dam that was blocking off water from reaching his home, again, I think. Again, it's been a while since I read the miniseries, so I wouldn't be able to give you exact details. Point is, he was planning to blow it up, so he was arrested and was going to be put on trial, but for whatever reason, Roxxon decided they just wanted to execute him right from the get-go, which I find stupid, because why would they be trying to set this up? Odds are he would be found guilty if he did stand trial, because the dam that was being set up was circulating water for Timely. I don't get it. Maybe it's because Roxxon didn't want any of their shady stuff coming into the public, but clearly the government knows about this stuff and could cover it up. Maybe they didn't want upheaval. I don't know. The story for Marvel 1872 genuinely didn't make any sense to me, and the reason why the conflict came about was just because the villains were just impatient and wanted to have this guy hanged as quickly as possible without a trial, even though if he went to trial, he'd probably be found guilty. And the only reason the good guys wound up fighting against Roxxon was because they were putting such a big deal on this, and as a result, that's what led to everyone fighting the bad guys, and what led to them siding with Red Wolf, which who he himself was not a bad guy. It's just that what he was going to do was blowing up a dam, and just, I don't know, it's just weird and all over the place. And while I will admit that, yeah, Roxxon are idiots, the whole conflict in the story only came about because they were just impatient for the result that probably would have happened anyway. So, I don't know. It's a weird and dumb story that it does make me kind of scratch my head a little. But the world that it's set up was one that I was interested in. Unfortunately, because I think of low interest, which don't quote me on that, I didn't really do research, but this is just what I believe. I think because of low interest, Marvel 1872 was never revisited, which again I think sucks. Because while I found the initial story in the original miniseries to be somewhat disappointing, the overall idea behind it I thought was rather interesting. I would love to see the world explored, as they were clearly laying the groundwork for more variations of the 1872 Marvel characters to appear. They, like I said, they clearly set up the Hulk. They clearly wanted to set up Spider-Man. We got brief cameos of the 1872 versions of the Punisher and Deadpool. I would have loved to have seen them I would have loved to have seen this universe revisited, but sadly it never was, and I think that's kind of a disappointment. So imagine my surprise when I was looking through the episode roster for season 3 of What If, and I saw that one of the episodes was an adaptation of that very miniseries, which I'm not against that. Like I said, I loved the world surrounding 1872. I just thought that the story could have been better. And so as a result, I was genuinely intrigued with what they were going to do for this episode. But do they take the premise and work it into and kind of push it into the right direction? Or is this another example of an interesting idea given a lackluster presentation? Well, let's take a look at this episode and find out. And well, the story begins as we meet our main characters this reality's versions of Shang-Chi and Kate Bishop, who in this reality are basically your typical lone wolf cattle rustling heroes of the West, doing their best to try and right wrongs wherever they go and hunt down criminals wherever they can, using their various means of taking out criminals. In Kate Bishop's case, she has the nickname of Hawkeye because she's, well, a sharpshooter, plus in the main universe she's Hawkeye. And Shang-Chi, well, he's the master of kung fu in every reality, so he doesn't really need a weapon to kick ass, as all he has to do is just come in with his fist and beat the shit out of everyone, which we see at the beginning of this episode as we see this world's version of John Walker, aka the US agent in the main MCU, but call Shang-Chi with the intent of taking him out, only by basically shooting a bell 10 times, as that's how you can call him. 10 rings, get it? And as a result, Shang-Chi and Kate just whoop the floor with John and his men. However, John Walker and his crew are not Shang-Chi and Kate's main target. Rather, they're prowling the West for one specific varmint, someone called the Hood. Why? Well, in this reality, Shang-Chi's sister, Zhao Ling, came to America to try and get away from her father. And of course, America was supposed to be the land of opportunity, where she thought she could get a fresh start, but as you do, the reality situation really didn't live up to the fantasy, and she found that there was, of course, paranoia and persecution, and a good old dash of racism in there, as a new criminal was making his way across the West, kidnapping anyone of Asian heritage. And this criminal was called the Hood, and as a result, Zhai Ling wound up hunting the Hood down in intent to face him, but when she went to confront the Hood, well, that's where her story kind of ends, as no one's heard from her ever since. And so, Shang-Chi, wanting to find his sister, wound up trying to hunt the Hood down with the intent of getting answers. And as for why Kate's hanging around, well, the Hood killed her family. At some point in time, the Hood wound up attacking Kate's homestead and pretty much just razed the place and killed her family. And so for Kate, this is personal. She wants to find the bastard who killed the one she loved and make him pay something fierce. And as a result, she and Shang-Chi have a common interest, and so they've been hunting the Hood together. And their search has led them to a desecrated town, as the tip from John Walker, who partially they were hunting down, led them here, but they just missed the Hood. Thankfully, they did find one survivor of this attack, a kid named Junnan, who says that the Hood came by last night, took everybody, and then fled out into the countryside on what he called a ghost train, which confuses Shang and Kate, because when they look to where the train was supposed to go, there's no track. So how the hell did it get across? Well, of course, the kid still insists on what he saw, and of course, Shang and Kate aren't questioning him. But so they decided that if he really is riding on something that's like a train, then maybe they can head him off, as they know another alternate route to where the train is possibly going, and they could use that to intercept this ghost train and possibly confront the Hood head on. However, for reasons I don't understand, the kid ends up coming with them, mostly because, well, he just wants to find the bastard who took his family. And so Shang-Chi, a little impressed by this kid's tenacity, and apparently, I should see, with the kid showing off his fighting moves, they decided to take him with, which I would still wonder, but then again, why would you leave a kid in a burning homestead? So I guess safer with them than there. I don't know. It's weird. Point is, they take the kid with them, and sure enough, they end up going through a rocky gorge, and they do end up intercepting the ghost train, as it seems to be going along the countryside with no tracks. As such, Kate, and Jun manage to catch up with the train, and we soon see why it's able to move along without a track. As it turns out, it's a hover train. There are like magnetic hover whatevers on the bottom of the train that allow it to glide along, even to the point where it can cross large chasms with little to no issue. But either way, it's still close enough to the ground that Shung, Kate, and Junan manage to get onto the train. And upon further investigating it, they see that the reason why the train is so basically so high tech is because, well, it's got a lot of extra parts in there, and apparently it's Stark tech. Yeah, apparently even in this universe, Tony Stark is still a tech mogul, which I kind of buy. I kind of like that. And I do love the idea of Tony Stark just being this immense genius that can utilize whatever he has at his disposal to make the most advanced that you can think of, even in a year like 1872. So I give you that. I give you credit. I like that. But it's not just Stark tech that the Hood stole, as upon going into another car on the train, they find that it's just stock full of weapons stolen from a lot of other suppliers. So it's clear that the Hood is gearing up for something. However, and we soon learn what the Hood has done with his captives, as once the trio of characters enters the next car, they find all of the Asian Americans that the Hood kidnapped, but all of them are in a weird trance. All of them are just kind of sitting there, not moving, and just looking straight ahead. Their their pupils are shrunken and dilated, and any attempt to try and wake them up from this stupor is unsuccessful, as Junan runs up to his dad, and he doesn't react at all. So it's clear that the Hood has done something to these people, and so Shung decides that they need to go and confront the Hood themselves in order to find out exactly what he did. As such, they go into the next car, and they do find that they aren't the only ones on the train who aren't in this comatose state. As they find a group of men all wearing masks and hats and all armed to the teeth, and in the middle of them, they find a fancy man in a suit named Sonny Birches, who claims that he is an executive that's investing in whatever the Hood is selling, and he basically is happy to see all of them because, well, the Hood wants to see Shang-Chi, which Shung was told about earlier with John Walker, but he's actually more than happy to see. But basically, Sonny's working with the Hood because, well, he's basically got a workforce out there that'll do whatever the hell he wants. And so all someone has to do is just say, hey, I need some workers, and he can sell them to them, no questions asked. Which, of course, Shung thinks is insane because this is supposed to be a land of freedom, and yet he's enslaving all these people against their wills, but the guy just kind of brushes it off. But either way, he does basically tell Shung and Kate that if they want to see the Hood, he can happily bring them to him, since, like I said, the Hood wants to see Shung. However, before they even get the chance, Junan manages to make a getaway, as on the instruction of Shung, he manages to use some of his own moves to knock out two of the guards watching him and make a run for it. And so, as Shung and Kate are led to the front of the train as they go to meet with the Hood, Sonny orders two of his men to find Junan and kill him, which, unfortunately for Junan, almost works, as he manages to climb on top of the train and they almost throw him off. But a bit of intervention comes in the form of the Watcher, who's seen Junan, decides to give him a helping hand by just messing up the footing of the two men chasing him. And so, as a result, they end up falling off of the train, and so Junan lives. In the meantime, back with our heroes, we see where the journey has taken them, as the ghost train has entered what looks like a dark tunnel, and upon arriving on the other side of the tunnel, they find what looks like the entrance to the Hood's hideout, as it's just covered in as we see what looks like a little door in a rock wall with a bunch of lanterns just hung about. And so of course, since Shung is the person the Hood wants to see, Shung goes out and basically calls out to the Hood, demanding to see him and to know where the hell his sister is. And as such, the Hood finally makes himself known, and I'll give credit, the Hood sounds fucking creepy. Dark, gravelly voice, there's the distortion, you can see some markings, and as the top of his head is hidden behind his, hood. But basically, the Hood asks Shang-Chi to join him, as he thinks that Shung is a worthy adversary, and that together they'd be unstoppable. Of course, Shung thinks that that's insane because the Hood is clearly crazy and he just wants to know where his sister is as well as to let all the people go. And so he pretty much just tells the Hood, "Well, I'm not going to work with you. I'd rather fight you." And so the Hood obliges as the two of them get into a rather good kung fu fist fight. As we see that the Hood is a very capable fighter and is more than a match for Shang-Chi. Meanwhile, back in the train, we see that Sonny Burgess isn't exactly powerless himself, as it turns out the Hood gave him a little tool to use on their captives. And we soon learn exactly how Sonny and the Hood were able to take control of all the Asian Americans that they kidnapped. As it turns out, a pocket watch that Sonny has, well, it plays a melodic tune that, when heard by someone for extended periods of time, causes them to go into this, well, dreamwalker state, as they basically lose consciousness, go silent, and just become completely numb and paralyzed, which Sonny uses on Kate and basically just kind of mocks her as she loses control of her body and even ends up basically paralyzed and a prisoner of her own mind. And Sonny decides to take this opportunity to gloat to Kate as he reveals that it wasn't the Hood that killed her parents, it was him. It was partially because the Hood was in their way and and they wanted their land. But Sonny didn't really like Kate's parents, and as a result, he pretty much was completely enjoying ending their lives. So, he's an asshole, and he fully intends on killing Kate using her father's own gun. In the meantime, back outside with Shang-Chi and the Hood, the fight is getting even more intense as we see the Hood has a few supernatural abilities up his sleeve as he manages to actually become invisible and just dart around the arena, sneaking up on Shang and delivering a few fists. However, Shang is able to finally get a drop on the Hood because while he may be invisible, well, the entire area is covered in soot or snow, whichever it is, and so Shang can hear the Hood's footsteps, which in turn allows Shang to actually land a decisive blow against the Hood before he can hurt him again. However, Shang manages to kick the Hood so hard that he falls back, and the Hood is pulled off to a degree for Shang to see the Hood's face. And it turns out that the Hood isn't a he's a she. And she is Xialing. Yeah, turns out Xialing is the Hood, although she didn't start out as the Hood. Basically, while the Hood was running around kidnapping Asian people, well, when Xialing confronted him, she beat him and basically took his place and decided to co-opting his mission so that she could kidnap all these people herself. Not because she wants to enslave them or anything, no. She wants to turn them into an army. Like I said, when Xialing came to America, the reality of the American dream wasn't exactly what she wanted it to be or what she was told it was. And so she pretty much decided upon herself that if America isn't going to be made equal for everybody, then she's going to make it be equal. And so she pretty much kidnapped all of these Asian American people with the intent of basically using them as foot soldiers if basically the white man, I'm going to just say, ever turned on them and decided that one group of people deserves to be lesser than another. Put simply, she's going to brute force her way into letting themselves be on top while everyone else gets to suffer. Of course, Shang thinks this is insane. After all, she's leading an army to try and force this equality. But on top of that, she's fucking kidnapping people and stripping them of their wills. There is no reality where she's the good guy in that regard. And so Shang still refuses to stand by her. Of course, Xialing still fights with Shang-Chi, and she pretty much just says that if he's not with her, he's against her, and so she says that she's going to kill him. In the midst of and she manages to even overpower Shang-Chi enough that he's on the ground and she's getting ready to use one of her chain knives or whatever they're called to deliver a killing blow. But thankfully, because Junan survived, he's able to turn the tide of battle in the hero's favor. As he manages to get to the front of the train, he manages to ring their bell, which in turn ends up disrupting things enough. Specifically, it ends up kind of messing with it kind of disrupts the tune that the pocket watch is playing, and so inside the train, this allows Kate to wake up from her stupor, grab Sonny's gun, and just start shooting all of his men until she has Sonny cornered. And while she could kill him, she decides that she thinks it's better off if he just suffers alive before she knocks him out. In the meantime, when Shang hears the commotion and hears the bell, it gives him enough of a push to get back on his feet and fight and face his sister, and he's still winning. But after she tries stabbing him one more time, he manages to catch her blade and says he's not fighting her. he still knows that Xialing is in there, and he doesn't want to fight his sister. And basically, she's just yelling, come on, fight me, fight me, fight me, come on! But he's just not doing it. In fact, he even just walks up to her and falls to his knees and says, go on, do it. I know, look, I can do it. I know my sister, and I know she wouldn't have the heart, so I'm not gonna fight you. And so he very much just lets himself be, he very much just leaves himself open, and it's clear that Xialing's just telling him, come on, get up, fight me, you have to fight me, and he's not doing it. And so she gets herself ready for the killing blow, but she can't do it. As she swipes her knife at Shang-Chi's throat, she can't do it. She intentionally misses. Although, unfortunately, even with this, well, from Kate Bishop's perspective, as she comes out of the train, she saw Shang-Chi almost getting his throat slit by the Hood, the man that they've been hunting all this time. And so Kate opens fire and shoots Xialing several times, throwing her to the ground and also throwing off her hood. Of course, when Zheng sees this, he reacts in horror as he runs to his sister and holds her in his arms. And the thing is, I mentioned how the hood had these weird markings on her face. Well, once the hood actually does fly off of Xialing, the marks fade. They're still kind of there, but they're lighter. It's like they were never there at all. Which I'll get to my thoughts on that later. Later, when I get to the end of the when I talk about what I liked about and what I liked about and what I disliked about the episode. But needless to say, once the hood is off, Xialing seems to be more in her right mind as she looks to her brother. But the wounds that Kate gave her, well, they're fatal. And as a result, she dies in Shung's arms. Of course, Kate didn't realize the person she was shooting was Shung's sister, and when she realizes that, she's horrified and apologizes immensely. But Shung tells her that it's fine, that his sister died a long time ago, killed by the Hood. And so, well, Shung, Kate, Junan, and all the Asian people that were kidnapped, who also broke free from their hypnosis thanks to what Junan did, all pretty much just leave this place with the hood just kind of flying off into the distance, leaving a bit of a mystery about what the hell this thing was. But as things wrap up, we see Junan back in the middle of a community as he begins talking about the heroic exploits of Shang-Chi and Kate Bishop, and, well, Shang is just happy to see Junan so happy and thinks that maybe he could be inspired to be a hero one day, as he seems to have an iron fist about him. But in the meantime, Shang decides that he wants to continue riding the homestead, as after all, he does want to carry on with Xialing's mission. Probably not to the degree that she did, but he wants to at least make sure that the fight for equality in America is equal, fair, and that if at ever at any point something happens, that bit where one person decides to look over another because of race, gender, background, etc. Well, he'll be there to make sure that the scales are even. And so the episode ends as Shung and Kate get on their horses and ride off into the sunset for more adventure. Although that's not where the story ends completely. I mean, that's where it ends in that universe. But as I mentioned, the Watcher intervened again. After all, if it wasn't for him, Junan wouldn't have survived. And because of that little intervention, it tipped the scales in this universe. Since Junan survived, it allowed him the opportunity to save both Kate Bishop and Shang-Chi while they were fighting their respective opponents. And if he wasn't there, things would have gotten a lot worse in this reality. So, yeah, the Watcher interfered in a big way, all from just tripping a couple guys up. And as we saw last week, the other Watchers were watching our dear narrator. And so as our view of this universe fades, the other Watchers confront our Watcher, Uetu, and let him know that they've been keeping an eye on him and that something needs to be done about him before they blast him with some kind of energy that throws him into a glittering wall of multiversal energy that ends up shattering some kind of world and causing shards of, well, I'm guessing, cosmic energy to fall into a random universe. And, well, that's where the episode truly ends. So, yeah, that was What If 1872. My thoughts on it? It's a pretty good episode. When it comes down to it, it's just a Western story, and quite frankly, it's a good Western story. There's nothing really too big about the story in terms of, like, grandness or whatever. I would dare say that when it comes to world building, the world building is, at best, minor. The inclusion of having this take place in an alternate Marvel universe, I admit doesn't really change it that much in terms of setting, aside from like a few details here and there. But otherwise, I do think it's actually a pretty good Western story with just elements of the Marvel Universe thrown in. After all, you got the Ghost Train with how it's basically a hover train that can fly on high tech equipment. We see the Hood and all of her capabilities with with her distorted voice, improved fighting prowess, and her own unique powers. We see that the Hood does have access to some serious technology in the form of what she stole, plus the little pocket watch that she gave Sonny Burgess. And quite frankly, and as you do, it is still nice to see this universe's variants of characters that we've seen in the MCU. Specifically, Shang-Chi, Kate Bishop, and various other characters, which, if just kind of go on a slight tangent, if you expect me to go on and talk about Kate Bishop in the MCU, I haven't seen Hawkeye, and until it becomes necessary to watch a movie, I still don't plan to see Hawkeye. And yes, I'm aware that it's been released on 4K. I don't have a 4K player, I only have a standard Blu-ray player, and it still pisses me off that they're not releasing them on standard Blu-ray. But that's an entire different issue that I'm not gonna get into. Point is, I'm not gonna watch Hawkeye until it's necessary for a movie, and since Thunderbolts is coming out, and I know that Yelena is in that movie, and she made an appearance in Hawkeye, it means I'll probably be watching the show very soon. But again, wholly different thing. Getting back on topic. Like I said, it's just nice to see the variants of these characters in there. I like that. I kind of just love the idea with Shang-Chi being that he's called the 10 Rings out in the West, and that in order to summon him, you just gotta shoot a bell 10 times, and the 10 rings are what finally call him. I like that Kate Bishop is called Hawkeye because she never misses when she shoots. It's just instead of arrows, she shoots pistols, which I think is fun. I like the tale of trying to hunt down the Hood and the journey that goes with Shang-Chi, Kate Bishop, and eventually Junan. I think it's all nice. I think the villains are actually some pretty good villains. Sonny Burgess is basically your typical scumbag landowner who wants to take advantage of the situation in order to get a cheap workforce by kidnapping Asian people, not knowing that his boss is basically kidnapping all these people in order to use them as an army against people like him. But whatever. I guess the Hood basically sees him as expendable, which, don't blame her, he's a jackass. But what I also love is the Hood herself, or rather, themselves. Because the thing is, what I like about the Hood is that you're not really clear if the Hood is a singular person, or is an identity that's passed around. Because the thing is, when we saw Xialing wearing the Hood, there was something odd about her. Like I said, when we saw Xialing, her voice was low and deep and gravelly and distorted, and we saw the markings on her face under the hood, and they looked fucking creepy. It made her look less than human, and even when you saw her face and she started speaking with her own voice, it was still changed and altered. It's almost sounding inhuman. And then likewise, like I said, when she was killed and the hood that she was wearing was knocked off of her, the markings on her face vanished and the distortion in her voice disappeared. And it kind of creates a weird ethereal presence with the Hood. Now, if the Hood is a character in the Marvel Universe and I just don't know a thing about them, well, sucks for me, but I like how they utilize this in the story because it kind of leaves it open whether Xialing had pure intentions and they were basically just corrupted because she couldn't really tell the difference between right and wrong, or if the Hood itself was twisting her intentions. Like I said, while her ultimate end goal was a noble one, basically ensuring that America stayed equal for everybody, how she wanted to go about it was by creating an army to basically brute force everyone into listening to her, and how she made that army was by kidnapping people. And again, in her own twisted way, she was trying to do this to protect them, but that don't excuse kidnapping and stealing people's free will. That's some pretty fucked up shit. And you gotta really kind of stretch it in order to even come to that realization, even with prejudice running around. So here's my personal theory, and I might be wrong, but I think the hood that she was wearing was a cursed hood, and that ultimately whoever wears this thing is doomed to become the next Hood, and the person that she fought who was actively hunting down Asian Americans, actively hunting down Asian Americans, probably wore this hood and was ultimately corrupted by it. Now that person may have already been a scumbag, and this hood just exemplified that. But I think when Kate beat him, she probably took the hood as like a victory trophy or what have you, and when the instant she put it on, it corrupted her as well, taking her pure intentions and just distorting them in such a way that she was willing to let her morals fall to the wayside, all because she wanted to pretty much help her people and not let them be subjugated. And I find interesting, and I wish it was explored more in the episode. I would have loved to have seen this explained more. Like maybe Shang-Chi wears the hood and he can feel the energy within it, and then he drops it like, no, this thing's bad. No one should touch this thing. And I would have liked that, but they don't really explain it. But to the episode's benefit, I think that's a good thing. It leaves it open whether what Xialing was doing was just because she made too many moral compromises, especially since in the main MCU, Xialing became the new head of the Ten Rings after her father was ousted. But the idea of this hood being able to also corrupt a person and pretty much just transform them into a monster by just taking what's already there and pushing it into a dark place, I like that. And I like that it's left ambiguous. So I think overall the hood is good. And while there are questions I have about the hood as a person, it's good. It's good curiosity. Enough is left in mystery that it also creates an ethereal presence to them, and I like that. And the fact that the last we see of the hood is it just being blown away into the wind, it's fucking creepy, and I dig that. I think that more than works and helps create an impression. Otherwise, the story itself, like I said, just kind of your standard Western story with some elements of the Marvel Universe in there, which it's not a bad thing at all. I like like I said, while the bits of world building to help showcase that this is a part of the Marvel multiverse are pretty neat, otherwise the story is a pretty standard one, which is not bad. It's basically just two Western heroes trying to find this twisted outlaw, bring him to justice, get revenge for all the wrongs that have been done to them, while also saving the ones they love. It's got a good twist with having Xialing be revealed as the Hood, which I thought was nice, not too out of left field, but definitely still enough of a plausible answer that you're shocked, but not too shocked, I suppose. I like the stuff with Kate Bishop. I like the stuff with Sonny Bridges and how he's just kind of your typical scumbag jackass who wants to exploit the landowners and kill anyone that gets in his way. And honestly, what happens to him is somewhat satisfying, even if he didn't get shot in the face. But then again, sometimes sometimes it's better to watch your enemy suffer. And likewise, I like the stuff with Junan, even if I would also argue bringing a kid along was dangerous, and if it wasn't for the Watcher, he would have been dead. But overall, again, I think it's just a pretty good story. Like I said, it's just a Western story with a few elements of the Marvel Universe thrown in. And I don't think that's bad at all. I like how the story progresses, I like the twists, I like the turns, I like how these alternate variants of the characters are portrayed, and I wouldn't be against seeing more of this universe. I would love to see more alternate variants of characters. In fact, or to put it another way, I kind of would have loved to see more of the journey of the characters we have here. Because in a strange way, because it keeps the elements of the Marvel Universe so minimalist in the episode, it allows you more time to actually focus on the story. Which I guess is basically kind of the opposite of what the 1872 miniseries did. Which the strength in that world was the world around it, while having a story that I think was subpar. Whereas in this one, it doesn't really focus too much on the world, save for a few elements, while the story is still primarily the main focus. And I think that can work. I admit that, I would love to have a story that took advantage of the situation while also having a more engaging plot, but for what we have here, again, I think it's enjoyable. So I think it's still enjoyable and does keep you entertained and interested in where things where things go. So on the whole, I think What If 1872, for what it is a good episode. And on top of that, it's nice to see the plot threads that are kind of left hanging at the end with the Watcher's fate. As once again he has intervened in the universe when he shouldn't have, and it came back to bite him in the ass. So there you go. Also, kind of a funny thing, we learned that apparently the further out in the multiverse you go, the universes are more less what if and more what the hell, as we see previews of the world that Alligator Loki came from, a world where the heroes are pirates, and apparently another world where Ultron was created to sing show tunes. I kind of want to see that universe, but I'm just padding this video out at this point. Overall, What If 1872 is just a pretty good episode. Not like a not like an amazing episode, but perfectly serviceable and enjoyable for what it is. I like seeing the variants of the characters. I like seeing the story progress. I like the twists and turns. I like the little ways that they showcase this is still tied to the MCU. On the whole, I think it's just a pretty good episode. So, yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. I thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and tune in next week as we see the consequences of the Watcher's actions, and we see the beginning of the end of What If. So till then, I hope you have a good Wednesday, and take care.